We'll call the meeting to order, and it's been an exciting week. Federal elections. I'll want to congratulate our MP on her re-election and thank all the candidates that stood for election. And yes, Sergeant in Arms, please.
My fingers are so dry I can't operate.
You know, I'm not sure if that's a commentary for today's meeting or not, Mr. Sturm. But we'll ask if there's any pecuniary interest or conflict of interest to be declared for any matters appearing on today's agenda. Okay, I see no indication of same, so we'll proceed. We have one addition to today's agenda. We have under 9.1 provincial hockey, minor hockey, and that'll be introduced by Councillor Holm. Is there any other additions? Yeah, seeing none, I entertain a motion to adopt the agenda as amended. Councillor Holm, any discussion? All in favor? Okay, that's carried. And then we have minutes 3.1 for the October 15, 2019 meeting. Councillor Chapman. Councillor Chapman moves those minutes as presented. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Okay. And then we have 4.1, we have follow up the Sunny South Lodge traffic calming. Spencer is here.
Thank you, Mayor, and good afternoon to you and Council. As you had already mentioned, this is a follow-up to an item that was brought to staff's attention and subsequently Council's attention on September 23rd. What it is a observation by a member of the Sunny South Lodge, one of the residents, who has rightly observed that there's a bit of an issue with, if we could go to the next page, Lena. On the image on the next page. So the intersection that would be considered a mid-block intersection that connects the condominiums on the south side of the road with the lodge itself on the north side of the road is helpful, definitely. This is a new addition from a couple of years ago. What this intersection, or what this crosswalk represents, is a better connection between the two facilities than was there in the past. However, it also represents a bit of a challenge in the sense that the vehicle on the left side of the image, if it were a little bit closer, which is sometimes the case, it makes it difficult to for a pedestrian to feel like they can cross that crosswalk before being seen, before they have to get a little bit further out into traffic. So it creates a bit of a sightline issue, a sense of discomfort with pedestrians and other users trying to cross at that location. As was indicated at the September 23rd meeting, an effort was made to look at different solutions that might be suitable for that location to allow pedestrians to feel a little bit more comfortable when they are crossing at that part of the street. So one of the options that was brought forward for Council's consideration today is a variation on a project the City of Calgary has been using for quite some time, which is essentially temporary curbs that can be moved after a pilot project. And so when they're in place, the ability for somebody to cross at that location, if we could go one more page down, Lena. So essentially for folks who want to cross at this intersection, they feel possibly a little bit safer because they can get a little further out into the road before they have to get into the driving lane. So there's more comfort for a pedestrian given that barrier that they have between them and the traffic. It allows them to be more visible. And the reason that this is brought forward from how the City of Calgary has been using it to possible use in Coaldale is that it's relatively cost effective and it's movable, which means if it doesn't work or if it poses a certain challenge, it can be moved, adjusted, or taken out. So at this time, that would be the recommendation from the staff, is that the construction and placement of curbing such as this can be placed at the location that we have on the design drawing on the screen now. Not to say it will look exactly like that, but this is an illustration showing what the intent would be. So we're not taking any parking spaces up because the yellow illustrated curbing that we see on the screen is basically where the yellow lines go to now, where you're not supposed to park. And if this were to be entertained by council, it would be based on a cost of about $1,000 a curb to be built, and our operations department would be able to place those curbs with their picker truck. So the total project cost based on the design we see on the screen would be in the area of $6,000 to implement. If council wishes to approve the pilot project, we would propose that once the curbing was installed, it could be monitored for a set period of time. Typically 6 months is a helpful period of time for something like this to be monitored before any additional work is done. And at the end of that time period, staff would come back to council with a report on what the observations have been from both people who cross that street at that location and drivers as well. I'd be happy to entertain any questions council may have at this time.
Thank you, Spencer. Any questions for Spencer? Councillor Chapman?
Thank you, Worship. And thank you so much for this presentation, Spencer. It really gives a good light to what the proposal is, and I endorse the concept in its wholeness. I have a question for you with regards to the residents on the south side of the proposed place there, if they've been invited to comment on your thoughts and what you're proposing with them?
Certainly, through the chair to Councillor Chapman, thank you for the question. We have been in touch with the residents on the right side of the crosswalk, the southeast side of the crosswalk, to the point that we've left them a voicemail. And so we're still trying to make contact. Okay. Again, one of the helpful things with these temporary curbs is that they can be moved and adjusted based on what the site that they're being proposed for might require. So in that sense, if these are to be placed there, we can even have the residents on the south side there when they're being placed, so that we can adjust slightly here or there if they feel that a certain location would help them to be able to back out of their driveway more easily.
Just a follow-up question, Your Worship, if I may, continuing with the parking on the south side, with what you've got proposed there, would it, I believe that it possibly would cause at least one parking space to be lost right after the crosswalk facing east. So it's just that one curb that you've got. But I also think that the shortness of space between the driveway to the west and the first curb, if you follow what I'm pointing to, whether that might be helpful just to remove all parking from that south side.
Certainly. So again, through the chair to Councillor Chapman, those are excellent points that we would make note of when we, if council chooses to approve, when we would cite those and place them. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Overall, I really like the proposal that you're putting forward.
Thank you.
Spencer, with your proposal, is this budgeted money, or where would the funds for this project come from?
Certainly. My understanding, thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. My understanding is that it's within the discretionary funds that remain available in the operational budget for the town this year.
And then another, would there be, like these bump outs and that, the temporary curbs, would they impede snow removal or anything? And would they be, is there like little flags that would be reflective so people can see these at night time and that?
Certainly. Thank you for the question. So as you can see on the image we have here from the city of Calgary, they've made a point of having the vertical rubber bollards that do have reflective tape on them. So we would follow that design exactly. And we're also, we've made contact with them a couple of times. They've provided some excellent technical information on the operation of these curbs or the use of these curbs, and we'll make sure that we follow up with questions as to how they deal with it specifically from a snow removal perspective. Anecdotally, I don't believe that we clear anything but driving lanes on 20th already, so as long as these are placed far enough back into the parking lane, it shouldn't be an issue for the snow clearing.
Okay, Councillor Holm?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a quick question. What is the difference in cost of this at $6,000 versus the strobe crosswalk lights that we have? We've got one just to the west of it already, and we've got a number of them within the town. Just want to know what the difference is in the cost there.
Certainly. Through the chair to Councillor Holm, thank you for the question. We have a slightly different design solution here, so it's not necessarily apples to apples, but for the question that was asked, it's about $750 to $1,000 per piece of curbing. So in this case, that would be, if we're saying it's $1,000 a piece, that would be $3,000 for what we see on the screen. The last set of flashing beacons that we've installed, which would be on the highway at 21st Avenue, those run about $15,000 a piece. And the one benefit, if I may, with these is that they can be repurposed and moved throughout town, whereas the flashing beacons are fixed in place.
Any further questions? Okay.
Maybe just one further then, if we can leave it on that slide there. Is it possible just to extend the yellow line on the north side of the street there to make it no parking for one more parking place? And all of a sudden, that frees up probably close to 40 feet then prior to that crosswalk. I'm just wondering if that isn't a much cheaper and easier solution to be able to maintain and operate.
Certainly, through the chair to Councillor Holm, that is something that we've partially implemented already, and I say partially because we're not quite at 40 feet there with the yellow line. However, Council may remember a couple of years ago when we approved the zebra crosswalks for use throughout town, we also extended the minimum distance where vehicles shouldn't park from a crosswalk, which is, according to the provincial rules, 3 meters. So we've extended that to 5 already. That gives us about 17 feet back from a crosswalk where a vehicle shouldn't be parking. One of the reasons that something other than painting has been proposed here is because vehicles frequently do park within that yellow line at this location. So the other solution would be maintain or extend those painted lines and then enforce. However, one of the tricky items with enforcing the yellow lines is beyond that 3 meters, we start to get into relatively muddy waters in terms of whether we can actually enforce and whether those types of tickets can be successfully fought in the courts.
Okay, I see Councillor Lloyd.
Thanks, Your Worship. So is that exactly how the curbs are going to look? Like the first slide that you looked, they were all smooth and that? Are they going to be like just curbs, or what's it going to look like? Like that? Go back to the first one. I think it looked like that. Is that how it's going to look?
Certainly. So through the chair to Councillor Lloyd, we provided this illustration to show what a traditional solution would look like. So in this case, we're just showing what the extension of the sidewalks does for the pedestrian. It narrows the distance they have to cross. But in this case, this would be what we would consider a permanent solution. So this would be between 5 and 10 times the cost of the temporary curbs that would be used in a pilot project.
I can see people tripping over those curbs if that's what they look like.
Right. If they stay within the crosswalk, they shouldn't have an issue, but that is a valid concern.
I like that.
Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. I think the principal idea here is for cost effectiveness and for visibility is that a pedestrian will be able to sort of position themselves sort of 4 or 5 feet out into the street where they can look both ways to see if vehicles are coming. So from the current position, they can't see any vehicles, and vehicles can't see them regardless of how far back you're going.
Councillor Holm.
Struggling with this. If we were putting this at Jenny Emery or someplace where we had kindergarten and little kids running out between cars, I could see it being a real visibility and an issue. We're talking adults crossing the streets here. Yes, they might be seniors, but they are adults. And I just kind of wondering if this is not going above and beyond what really needs to be done. I don't know how many close calls there's been there, but I can assure you there's been a lot more close calls in the Jenny Emery area and probably in St. Joe's area of little kids running out from between cars. So I'm struggling with this one, and I don't think I'd be in favor of spending the $6,000 at a crosswalk for adults.
Councillor Chapman?
Thank you. I'm of the opposite opinion, and I would certainly like to make a motion that we approve the construction and installation of movable curbs at this mid-block crossing. I guess I could add to that be monitored for their usage, and whether at a temporary later time you might consider a different mode of or method of a crossing, whether it be lights or something to that effect. But for this time, I'll make this motion.
So just to be clear, that you add for review after 6 months of installation? Is that part of your motion?
Actually, that would be a very good idea. I'll just do that, further that we do that.
Here you have a motion by Councillor Chapman. Any discussion? Councillor Lloyd?
Yeah, Your Worship, I still have concern about it. The snow, like, there's going to be snow in between those blocks, and how are the people going to go across there in their wheelchairs and their walkers if it's going to be impossible to remove the snow with those boulders in there? I don't know. I just can't see how that's going to work.
Do you have a response to that, Spencer? Or
Oh, sure, if I may. Thank you, Mr. Chair. One solution that could be used, as it is similarly in other parts of the town, would be that for instance, driveways aren't blocked, as far as I understand, with our snow clearing program, so they could be shoveled. That small portion could be shoveled by hand as a part of the work done after the main clearing is completed. But that's not necessarily the most efficient way of going about it. That is one option that's available, though.
okay, any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, that's 3. And opposed? Okay. Defeated. All right. Then we have, thank you, Spencer.
Thank you.
Then we have the land use, public hearing, rezoning land use bylaw 767P09-19. Cindy.
So this is the rezoning of a parcel of land that's currently designated residential R1A to rezone it to residential small lot R1B.
Okay, so I'll declare this public hearing open. And you can introduce it then, Cindy. It's right there. Do you have anything further to speak on it?
No,
Was there any, it was advertised in
Yeah.
accordance to procedure and there was no objections written received?
correct. It was advertised for 2 weeks in the Sunny South News, and the neighboring properties were mailed out letters.
Does anybody have any questions for the administration? Okay, I see none. Is there anybody in the gallery that is here to speak either for or against this matter? Okay, I don't believe there are any. Does council have enough information to make their decision on this matter? I don't see any requests for more information, so I'll close this public hearing. And we'll come back to that a little bit later then. We have item point 2, land use amendments 768P-09-19. Spencer?
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. This item is for public hearing for bylaw 768-P-09-19, land use bylaw amendments proposed as a result of annexation. There's a little bit to get through here, so I'll ask Alana to navigate as we start off on the report. Essentially, the reason that this is before council is because we've annexed the 1,460 acres of land that were annexed into the town April 1st, 2018. And there are a number of changes that, from a land use regulation perspective, have to be made to ensure that over the longer term, all the properties that have been annexed can be adequately and appropriately and effectively managed from a land use perspective. As a part of that process, ultimately what we're doing is switching lands from a county zoning to a town zoning. So at this point in time, the idea is that there isn't a lot of major change that's going to occur for any one landowner. Really what it's doing is changing from a county land use to a similar town land use. Over the past year or so, there have been a number of meetings and workshops and discussions with landowners who wish to participate in those types of processes to share with staff what tweaks need to be made or are proposed to be made to council for these bylaw changes. Overall, the most significant changes or changes that were requested were a number of land uses that have been requested to be brought from the county zoning. For the most part, that was rural urban fringe, and if not rural urban fringe, there are a couple of properties that were grouped country residential. For those land use zonings, the idea would be that a number of specific uses have been requested to come from those zonings into the town zonings for similar zonings, which would be urban reserve and group country residential 2. Overall, the uses that have been requested to be brought into these town zonings from the county zonings are second dwellings, agricultural services, garden centers, horticulture, market garden and nurseries, stockpiles, shipping containers, and recreational vehicle storage. I should clarify, it's not to say that every landowner who has been annexed has asked for these things to be included, but those are the items that were shared by specific landowners who have chosen to provide feedback to the town on how they would like the town zonings to work for their properties. Instead of just saying, sure, let's take that to council, one thing that we do from a planning perspective look at definitions. So what Lana has up on the screen right now is definitions for each of the uses that have been considered to be brought into the town zonings. And the reason we look at definitions is because the exact definition of a use can have a significant impact on how that use is undertaken in a given jurisdiction. Ultimately, what we found is that, for the most part, the uses have been defined in a similar way. There are a couple of exceptions. So, second or additional residences, we didn't have a specific use listed for that land use. So, what we've done is proposed that the use and the definition come into the town zoning along with a couple of tweaks to make sure that it's considered within an urban or a peri-urban context. Agricultural services were defined in a similar way, not entirely exactly the same. So one note under whether the definition is similar is that the county definition explicitly includes materials services and animal services, none of which are included in the town zoning. However, the town's definition includes a broad-based phrase such as other agricultural supply businesses within its definition, which helps to capture some of the specifics that the county zoning is allowed. Garden center, the definitions were similar to the point where there's no change of definition requested. Horticulture, the definitions are aligned overall. However, there are two important differences. The county definition is much more specific regarding examples used in defining horticulture, and the county definition includes mushroom growing, where the town's definition excludes mushroom growing. And that's proposed to stay the same. Market gardens and nurseries, those definitions are aligned enough that no change has been proposed. Stockpiles being incidental on properties in town, it was proposed that the definition nor the use come into the town zoning. Essentially, for stockpiles, it would be regulation for the sake of regulation instead of for a specific purpose. So at this point, the community services bylaw can or it's proposed that the community services bylaw could take care of stockpile as a specific use. Shipping containers are the same. Recreational vehicle storage was not the same because there currently is no definition for recreational vehicle storage in the town bylaw. So it's proposed that the recreational vehicle definition in the town bylaw be used along with the idea of storing vehicles as a way of allowing that definition and that use in the town zoning. Beyond simply bringing the proposed land uses into the town zonings and adjusting the definitions, there are two specific uses that required further attention. First was second or additional residences, and second was recreational vehicle storage. So for second or additional residences, it's in some cases an excellent idea, and it also can pose positive and negative impacts to different lands if they're allowed to have additional residences on them. So because of that, this report and the associated bylaw proposes that additional scrutiny be placed on second or additional residences so that they cause no issues for future development or existing infrastructure or servicing rights of way or utilities or any other capital assets that the town maintains. So at this point, the proposal for regulating second residences specifically, the proposal as captured in the proposed bylaw would be that they be listed as discretionary uses, and the same regulatory framework that's in the county's bylaw be brought into the town's bylaw with a number of minor changes to capture the fact that we're in an urban or a peri-urban setting now instead of a rural setting. In a similar sense, recreational vehicle storage is something that can have significant benefit for landowners, and it can also have significant impacts, both negative and positive, for landowners, properties around them, and other public areas such as roadways. So again, the intent would be that the county's regulatory framework for recreational vehicle storage be brought into the town's framework with a number of tweaks to ensure that the regulations are well suited for an urban setting instead of a rural setting. In terms of public engagement, there have been, as I've mentioned, a number of letters, meetings, workshops scheduled, as well as one-on-one discussions with landowners throughout the process of coming to the proposed changes that we have here today. An advertisement was also placed in the Sunny South newspaper for 3 consecutive weeks. Given the size and scope of the changes, they're changing overall parts of the bylaw, so it was circulated for an additional week beyond what we consider a minimum requirement. So for 3 consecutive weeks on October 8th, 15th, and 22nd, the proposed bylaw was circulated, and as of the date of the preparation of this report, there were no responses received from those in favor or against the bylaw. Additionally, all landowners within a 60-meter area of the properties that this would most affect had been circulated by mail as well. And that coincides with changes to bylaw or changes that bylaw 770-P-09-19, which is a rezoning bylaw, have proposed as well. So at this time, council may wish to consider any changes to the bylaw prior to considering second and third reading. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, having opened the public hearing, is there any questions of council through to administration? Councillor Chapman?
Thank you, Worship, through to Spencer. So the proposal has to grandfather current either practices or current buildings, current agreements, I guess, as they stand with the county landowners.
Through the chair to Councillor Chapman, that's correct. So anything that was approved by way of a development permit or by way of anything that's exempt from a development permit in the county land use bylaw up to and including today would be allowed to continue into the future. I should note that a number of the uses, actually the vast majority of the uses that are occurring on a lot of the properties within the annexed lands do align with the urban reserve or the country residential 2 zoning. So there really wasn't a need to address any specific issues that had been identified as being tricky to navigate, other than Rehoboth Christian Ministries has a fairly unique operation, and that's why their property specifically has been left off of the rezoning discussion that's going to follow this bylaw. That would be brought back at a later time in the form of a proposed direct control bylaw. Other than that, there's a lot of alignment between what the county has allowed and what the town zonings would allow.
Well, thank you for bringing the, particularly the Rehoboth situation into, so that'll be, the conversations on that will be upcoming for council to consider.
Through the chair to Councillor Chapman, yes, definitely.
Okay. And since April 1st of 18 to today, any changes that were, or any secondary buildings that were added out on those annexed lands, for example, would be into the grandfathered agreement?
Through the chair to Councillor Chapman, yes, that's the case. I believe we've had one or two second residences brought into properties that have been annexed since 2018, and we've used the county land use bylaw, as we're beholden to do so, to approve those uses.
Thank you.
Any additional questions to administration? You see none. Is there any members of the public in today's gallery wishing to speak either for or against this bylaw? Okay. Well, Mr. Boss, if you can identify yourself for the record for me, please, and your address.
Peter Boss, the landowner of the northeast of 9920. And I know this is going now to urban reserve, from urban fringe to urban reserve, right? And is it going to stay there as long as it gets determined whether it goes to residential, commercial, or whatever other zoning? Is that how this works, more for clarification?
Spencer, you're the expert, so I'll let you field the question on the.
Certainly, through the chair, that's kind of you to use the term expert. Thank you. To clarify Mr. Voss's question, that's very much the case. So essentially, urban reserve, even in the description of what that zoning is for, we have descriptions in each of our zonings in the bylaw, and that is exactly the case. So urban reserve is essentially a holding district until a much more detailed understanding of what's going to be occurring in that specific urban reserve area is made, and that's typically in the form of an area structure plan, which then would have its own public process, and there would be a lot more detail as to what that future urban development is going to look like. But in the case of urban reserve, technically we don't allow much beyond what the land uses are within that district until we have a better understanding of how and where and why areas that are zoned urban reserve are going to grow in the future.
Thank you. Does that?
Thank you.
Is there any other? Okay. I'll ask again. Is there anybody that wants to speak either for or against? I see no one coming forward. So, Council, do you have enough information to proceed? I don't see anybody engaging their microphones for further questions. So, at this time, I will close the public hearing on that matter. And we will go to item point 3, and I will open the public hearing on land use rezoning 770-P-09-19 and give the floor to Spencer.
Well, thank you again, Mr. Chair. As mentioned, this is in relation to public hearing for proposed land use redesignation bylaw 770-P-09-19. And this relates directly to the previous bylaw that was brought forward that proposed a number of changes to the regulatory framework of the land use bylaw. Now what we have in front of us is a rezoning proposal that would see the majority of the 1,460 acres that were annexed be rezoned from their current zonings, which, as I'd mentioned, is predominantly rural urban fringe. There is a pocket of grouped country residential, and the zonings that are proposed for this rezoning in particular would be from rural urban fringe to urban reserve, from grouped country residential to country residential 2, and from rural urban fringe to institutional recreational for a small portion of the lands. What I'll do is have Lana, if you could scroll down to page... 8, please. And zoom out just a little bit if you could. So what we have before us is a color-coded map that shows, the title of the map is Land Use District Redesignation Schedule ABC. This captures the 3 separate maps that are within the bylaw that's before council today. Schedule A is all of the, I'm not sure what to call these colors. We'll call the first one yellowish. So the yellowish color would be the majority of the properties, which is rural urban fringe. And so that area is proposed to go from rural urban fringe to urban reserve. Schedule B in the bylaw would be what I will call purple, which is grouped country residential under the county zoning, and that's all proposed to go to country residential 2, which is the town zoning. And last but not least, we have the lime green, which is rural urban fringe currently, and is proposed to go to institutional recreational. So very briefly, the reason that the urban reserve or the rural urban fringe is planned to go to urban reserve is that the majority of those parcels need additional consideration in terms of what urban growth is going to look like there before they can be further subdivided and rezoned to residential and commercial and institutional zonings and all of the zonings that make up a neighborhood. As for grouped country residential to country residential 2, we do have about 20, I believe it's 20 or 21 parcels that are purple on the screen that already have some kind of development or intended country residential development on them. And so the most closely related zoning that we have to grouped country residential is country residential 2. And lastly, we have the lime green, which is rural urban fringe, going to institutional recreational. And the reason for that is it is a part of the Malloy Phase 2A project and the catchment and conveyance area. However, there's also quite a bit of landscaping and some linear trails in that lime green area that are better suited to institutional recreational than they are to something else like public utility lot. And along with the changes that were discussed for the regulatory framework that we brought forward with Bylaw 768, the intent of Bylaw 770 is to transition all of the properties that are, as of today, still under a county land use zoning to similar town land use zoning so that we can effectively and efficiently manage those lands from a development perspective now and into the future. I'll leave it there, and I'm happy to answer any questions council may have.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. The proposal for Rehoboth is obviously here what you're speaking to is direct control as opposed to any other type of zoning for them.
Certainly. So through the chair to Councillor Chapman, the reason that Rehoboth isn't going to something like highway commercial is because there is a manufacturing manufacturing element to the use that they have there. So with that manufacturing and commercial element that they have, it's difficult to find a land use that would be able to capture that type of activity in the highway commercial or the commercial zonings or the light industrial zonings or the industrial zonings. So when we have a use that spans a number of zonings, we tend to look at that as a specialized activity that is best suited for direct control.
Okay, thank you. My following question is on the institutional recreational, the green zoning. Under that zoning, there would be no development occurring on those lands of any kind?
Certainly, through the chair to Councillor Chapman, given the size and shape of the lands and the intended use of the lands, we have a use that is permitted under the institutional recreational zoning that is already developed there, which is stormwater catchment and conveyance. And in some ways, I guess you could call it a linear park space with the pathways being incorporated. Beyond that, as far as I understand, there are no future plans for any kind of development, nor would there be space or the ability to develop anything else, even if that was the desire, given the size and shape of the lots.
Thank you. I think I like the green park space thinking. That seems to be a popular thing with many municipalities across the country.
Is there anybody in the gallery that would like to speak in for or against? Lee, if you can identify yourself.
Dwayne Sturm, I live in the areas that are being annexed. I just want to know about the quarter section that the town owns. It's not included in any rezoning. Has it already been rezoned, Spencer?
Through the chair to Mr. Sturm, yes, it has. I believe it was, I want to say November or December of last year. There was a rezoning process that took place for those two
That's
pieces.
fine. I was just wondering.
Certainly.
Because it wasn't included in your annex. Okay, thank you.
Is there anybody further that wants to speak for or against? None last time? So one last time, anybody in the gallery? None? Okay. Does council have enough information before it? Okay. I believe that will conclude this public hearing. I'll call it closed and thank Spencer for his time here, and we'll consider that shortly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
We have a delegation. Tim Jens from Coldale Handy Ride is with us today. So, Tim, if you'd like to come forward, and thank you very much for taking time to join us. We have your package here, and then I'll load it up.
Very simple slideshow. Thank you, Council, for having me here and allowing me to present. Just wanted to come and give a brief update of what we've been doing as a Handy Ride Association the last number of months. I think all of you are aware the brief history. Last year around this time, the current board of Handy Ride Association issued a letter indicating they wish to resign, I guess would be the right word. They were tired. They wished to see the association carry on, but with different board members. And that's kind of the crux of what we've tried to achieve. In the last 12 months, we've had a number of meetings, and Councillor Bill Chapman has been very involved in helping recruit some board members. I think we had our AGM in June, and there were installation of new board members. Several carried on, but I believe there are 5 new, so we have 7 members at this time. We also had a complete wholesale change of the drivers. We have 3 new part-time drivers that are working on a rotation, and we've been setting up a monthly board meeting schedule to try and go through business. Our real goal for this year was to ensure that the service continued. We weren't going to really try to make a lot of change. We simply wanted to ensure that the service was still available to members of the community. However, there is some information that I've provided in terms of our financial statements to October 19th. Were presented to you. Very simply, we have a net income of about $17,000. There were some operating costs that have gone down a bit. We've continued to maintain our salary structure with the drivers. Ridership is down a touch, about 11% year over year, but well within kind of the long-term trends. So we actually felt that that was a fairly reasonable outcome given the amount of anxiety about the service ending. I think we did see a bit of a dip in rider participation because people were not sure if it was continuing on or what. We definitely are in the process of examining the composition of our rides because that can also change our cost structure. What percentage are in town, what percentage are going to Lethbridge. I can say our preliminary assessments are that ridership is quite variable. It often can depend on one client or a handful of clients suddenly needing a lot more rides. If we get a client that requires dialysis in Lethbridge, they may be having a ride daily, 5 days a week, which in some ways would look good for statistics, but when they stop needing that service or stop using that service, it looks like ridership has fallen a lot. So it's hard to read a lot into the ridership statistics. Basically, I guess I would take questions about any of the information that I've provided. Mostly, I wanted to thank you for continuing to provide the financial support. I guess I did also want to talk a little bit about what we've got planned for the future. We have engaged with the provincial Alberta Culture and Tourism, the community facilitators, to lead us in a strategic planning session in mid-January. Out of that, we will likely break into facilitated community engagement sessions to try and get a better sense of how can we provide better quality of service, or just do what we need to do to try and enhance the quality of life of the residents of Coaldale. And you'll note that I intentionally left out that they're handicapped or that they're seniors. I think there may be some possibility for this to provide transportation. But that will come as we get more information from the residents of Coaldale, the stakeholders, and we'll develop our business plan hopefully by the end of the second quarter to see where could this service go. So I think our real analysis is how do we provide greater value to riders and to the community, and I guess on a long-term basis, what amount of financial support is required to do those things. Yeah, so with that, I guess I'm open to some questions.
Well, thank you, Mr. Johns. I want to, on behalf of the town and council, I want to thank you for stepping up to take a leadership role in the continuation of this service and keeping it going so that there was no gap to the needy, the most vulnerable citizens of Coaldale in a transition period. So very much appreciated, and I'll open the floor to council for any questions. Or Councillor Lloyd?
And thanks, Tim, for coming. I really appreciate the handy bus this summer when we had homecoming. They stepped right up and we had the bus tour, and there was a few people that needed the handy bus. And I just really appreciated you coming out. I just want to give you a thank you card for that. You pass that along to Mike and the driver. It was,
Thank you very much, Councillor Lloyd. Indeed, there have been a number of events that we've tried to, I guess, raise our profile a bit and see meeting this mandate of providing higher quality. So we put the bus in as a float in the Candy Parade, Settlers Day Parade, and invited any riders, or actually any people, I think, from the lodge. Green Acres had their bus as well, and the driver said he couldn't believe how much noise was coming out of the bus, let alone at the bus. People were pretty excited. With the homecoming as well, I think we're going to be involved providing transportation from some off-site parking to the Gem of the West for the Carol Festival. So I guess we're trying to take baby steps of reinventing ourselves to see how we can provide this service to people. It does come down a bit at this point to, do we have a driver that's willing to work outside of normal operating hours? But those are things that I think we need to address in our engagements and our business plan. Are our operating hours right? I think if you're looking to get to a doctor's appointment, yep. But if you're looking to get to a social event that generally would happen on weekends or evenings, not so much. So those are things that we have to weigh to see how we might be able to address that.
I think, I'm not sure what the budget did to the transportation pilot project between Medicine Hat and Lethbridge. I was trying to scan through, but was it deleted or is it continuing in 2020?
One-time fund.
So that might be something to talk about in your upcoming strat plan on if there's any gaps at that, because I have a bad feeling that probably will be one of the things that will not be continuing as well. Any other comments or questions through to our presenter?
Might just say, as representative of council on the Handy Ride Association, I wanted to thank the president, Tim Jansen, for your diligence and your perseverance in ensuring that this program and service continue in Coaldale. And you know, I've heard and learned through the community that this is one of the more vital services that our community needs, and particularly our seniors. And what we're providing to them currently is addressing their needs. How can we grow and how can we deliver the service that might be more robust and more well-rounded to the community are some questions that I look forward to learning through. And currently with our messaging, I think that's one of the things that we'll continue to build on to ensure that our community understands that this service is here to stay. And I think being visible in the community through the parades, through some of the other events, and the Choral Festival that's coming up in December will certainly be a great sign that we're here to participate in the community in a well-rounded manner. And I think the branding part will be another part of it that we'll see in the future. So I'm just grateful for you, Tim, as stepping up to the plate and bringing together other gracious volunteers who see passion about this service.
I would defer the thanks or pass it on to that. There's a lot of people around the table, and I'm just one of a group. Actually, what we're really excited about is, we were quite worried about the drivers had been there for quite a while, and can't really do the bus without the drivers, and we found 3 very capable people, very engaged. Have done a great job, and also our bookkeeper Lou Weens has taken over that as a volunteer, and she's the reason that you're getting these reports. We get them on a monthly basis, and happy to share them. So I don't know you'll see me. I'm usually fairly camera shy, but you'll definitely see the information. We think that I believe that we owe that at a minimum to the people who have graciously funded our program, that we provide them information to carry on and to understand. We may come back at times for different requests, but only based on information we provide. I hope you don't ever feel that we assume your support. We have to earn it, and not to say anything negatively. I guess that the former board had their own reasons for decisions, but our board will meet regularly, and our board will give you information. I think that's the only way we can operate.
Very good. And don't worry about being camera shy, because the back of your head comes off beautifully.
Yeah, great. It's just really big. Anyway, all right. Any other questions?
No, I don't believe so. Thank you very much. And
Thank you.
We'll
And
receive your report.
I'll put the last pitch in that continued financial support is very welcome. It added a layer of stability for us to get our feet wet and to really understand what it all took to keep it running where it was. We're very hopeful in 2020 we'll get a much better sense of where it can be perhaps, rather than just where it is. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Motion to receive that report for information. Councillor Chapman, any discussion? All in favor? Okay, and then Cindy, back on item 6.1. Any further comments on that matter?
Nope.
Okay, any discussion, if council's willing, that this is the time that we can entertain second reading, if that's your desire, or any proposal, any amendments, or does anybody care to sponsors, Councillor Chapman? Okay, we have a motion by Councillor Chapman to sponsor second reading of that bylaw. Any discussion? Call the question, all in favor? Okay, and that is 4, and opposed? 3. Okay, and that's carried. All right, and then we have item 6.2. Oh, no, I guess we gotta go to third reading. There we go. Councillor Simpson moves third reading. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? 4, and opposed? 3, and that is carried. Thank you, Cindy. And we have item 6.2. Anything to add, Spencer, at all? Or?
Nothing to add. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Right. At this point, we can entertain the second reading or any other option you so choose. Councillor Simpson sponsors second reading of this. Call the question. All in favor? Okay, that was carried unanimously, I believe. Yes. And third reading. Councillor Chapman. All in favor? And that's unanimous as well. And then 6.3. Councillor Simpson sponsors second reading. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? That's carried unanimously. And anybody for Councillor Holmes sponsors third reading? Any discussion? All in favor? And that's unanimous. Hey, thank you, Spencer.
Thank you.
And we have Deputy Chief Getman with us today, and welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. I believe you got a package before. So what I'm doing today is just going through the second and third quarter emergency services report and update to what's been going on there. So next slide, Lana. So the overview, say the Cold Island District Emergency Services responded to 196 incidents in total during this period. 105 were medical first response, 91 were fire alarms and MVCs, and that was to a date of September the 19th. We responded to 290 emergency events to that date. We've been very busy with training since the delivery of the new Quint that took part in May of this year. There's been a variety of additional training opportunities that many members have seized and taken. Fire instructor, fire officer, vehicle extrication, wildland firefighter training courses, etc. So we'll go to the call volumes. As of, like I say, this year we have 290 calls at the end of September. 122 were fire and 168 were medical. At this rate, we are expected or very close to being to where we were last year, on that 400 call mark for the year. Next slide, Lana, please. Comparison in the town calls, just rundown of them versus the county calls. August was a busy month for both town and county. Say April month, the month of April was also very busy for the county, and that can be your transition period from winter to spring. We still have a lot of fuel before the grass is greened up and crops have taken off, so we typically see an increase in that. But April was a very busy time for the county. We look into the town calls. August proved to be a very busy month for us as well. On the high side, we had a very high number of alarm calls for that period of time. Most of the time we've been sitting between 4 and 6 calls, and we jumped to 11 in the month of August. What that reflects, if it's more people are having alarm systems installed, but we're glad to see those. A lot of them were cooking fires or cooking burnt food on a stove, that maybe if they never had these alarm systems, it could have resulted in a fire in a house, resulting in personal loss, if not injury as well. So that's the call. If we go to the hours, the next one, Lana. So the hours, say we've got 274, let's see here, for the month of August. So like you said, the month of August was very busy for us. Say we have closed the gap on the town calls versus the county calls. We are sitting at 51% for the town and 49% for the county. Now that's typically going to fluctuate back and forth, but we've come to a very close split there now. Say medical calls, we have capped it, you guys know, in town at 0.25 of an hour per call and a 0.5 of an hour for county calls. So everything is tried to cap at a normal or a base that is comparable or even, so you don't take travel into expense or into account on those things. So next one, Lana. So training, we've been busy training at the fire department as well. So just an update over the second and third quarter. So in April, the month of April, we sent 4 firefighters to Picture Butte. It was a leadership, a 1021 course. By having our guys, members attend these, it gives them officer and leadership training. And it preps them for future leadership officers, senior firefighters, to be able to understand what is needed in an advanced level of being on scene command. May of this year, we had 6 firefighters attend a course called Nozzles Forward in Lethbridge. Now, Aaron Fields is a certified instructor from Seattle. He came to the city of Lethbridge and presented this class to Southern Alberta fire departments. Now, we had the 6 people that attended it, so they got introduced to new tactics, new strategies. They watched some class videos, some on hands. And then it was a 2-day course. One day they went into the tower at Lethbridge Fire Department, and they were able to do a lot of on hands, physically getting the nozzle, advancing, seeing how this theory actually falls into work, how it makes a safer advancement for the firefighters. On June, we had 2 firefighters that also attended a big rig extrication course. Now that was held up in Nisku, and that's because of the increase of traffic, large truck traffic in the area. So we felt this was necessary. We had 2 guys go up and take that. That deals with highway tractors, buses, and it can also be related into farm equipment, industrial equipment. You're learning about the balance, weight centers of gravity, different ways of stabilizing and cribbing. So a very well worth course. The month of June, We had 3 firefighters complete their NFPA, the 1041, that was hosted in Coaldale. So that's the beginning. It's a instructor's course, so it gives them their level 1 instructors. So now we have another 3 members on the department that can help the accredited instructors teach and host future training courses. The month of July, we were very busy. We took, as stated before, we took possession of the aerial truck in May, the end of May, and July the 22nd, we had a technician from Pierce come down and give us hands-on training on the truck, and we were able to have an amazing 22 firefighters go through that. It was a Saturday and a Friday course, so a number of guys dedicated their weekend to it as well, and we had a very good turnout. 22 guys were able to do that. September of this year, we also had 3 firefighters attend a 1051 course. It is wildland firefighting in Nobleford. So that was able to teach them the wind velocity, different fire lines, how to make fire breaks. Something that we've seen before here, the grass fires, the wildland fires. So the more training we can get for them, and being local, the better off we are. So that was our training. Okay, Lana? Going on to the fire hall construction here. So over the last 2 quarters, the fire hall expansion has started to take shape. The progress as of late has been slower than anticipated. However, town staff have been working diligently to ensure forward progression continues while remaining on budget. We currently await an update construction schedule from the contractor. At this point, the project is estimated to be about 3 to 4 weeks behind, which puts the phase 1 completion date closer to the end of the year. Update on that, so we have a meeting this Tuesday, tomorrow, with the builder. So we'll have some better ideas of how things are situated right now, but things are going ahead. There were some pictures you can see. It is starting to take shape, and I think it's complementing the Main Street landscape very nicely at this time. So. Okay, Lana, the next one. Recruitment and retention. So Coaldale and District Emergency Services is continually looking for new and innovative ways to retain volunteers. One that we found is the firefighter fitness program that council graciously supported. Has a utilization rate of 43%, which is slightly higher than anticipated, and the firefighter fitness program has been successful in enhancing and promoting the health and wellness of our firefighters. Recruitment and retention of firefighters is not a local problem. Some describe the current volunteer shortage as a crisis in North America, so we are lucky to have the dedicated group of volunteers that we have in Coaldale, and must do everything possible to try and save that pride that we have here. We must find new and creative ways to acknowledge and support the immense sacrifices that firefighters make in keeping our communities safe. And an update on that as well, in the second quarter, Coaldale Emergency Services held a recruitment drive for an additional volunteer firefighters. 2 new members were awarded positions and started with the department in May of 2019. We opened up another recruitment drive this October, and we expect or hope to hire another 2 to 4 volunteer firefighters. Our current roster is at 33 active members. Our goal remains to achieve a staffing level of about 40. Our priority is to bring the right people into our organization that are volunteering for the right reasons to be on the town fire department. So it may take a little bit longer to reach our goal of 40, but we'll be saving time and resources by what we think is taking our time finding the right people for the job. This strategy was implemented in 2017 and has proven effective. A table shows us the recruitment over the last 3 years. So you can see 2014 we recruited 11, to 16 we recruited 11, retained 5, volunteers lost was 55%. 17 to 19 we recruited 10 and retained 8 and a loss of 20%. So it's excuse me, it's still a ongoing battle, to keep people on the department, but so I think we're doing pretty good the way it is. We're running, and like I say, we've got, I think, another 6 or 7 right now that have applied for the recruitment drive that we've got going right now. So if we can get another 2 to 4 out of this drive, we'll be very pleased and be able to get them on the training. So, okay, next one, Lana. Also, public engagement this last second and third quarter that we had. Kate Andrews High School, we have an experiential learning week in May where we take a number of students that may show some shining or some interest into emergency services, and we give them a quick taste of what it's like to be on it, on a department, what they might encounter, some of the equipment and tools that we use. We were able to let them have some hands-on experience with some of them. In June, we have our annual hose laying competition. This year, we had a number of the women, the wives of firemen that came out and participated, had a great deal of fun, and it was enjoyed by all. The month of July, we had Settlers Days coming up, or it was there. We did a slip and slide as long as parade activities. Also, McHappy Day was in May, and we did a Calgary firefighter stair climb, which was the first time that we'd entered or sent somebody to that one. So that one, we had 5 members go and take part in that. It was a 775 vertical feet, 1,204 stairs of the Bow Building in full gear. The money that was raised from firefighters donating was going to the Wellspring Foundation, and it raises money for first responders living with cancer and battling cancer. So that was some of our public relations coming up, just upcoming, so we don't slow down. We've got the Parade of Lights coming up this November. We've also got our annual banquet coming up. November, we have hopefully our calendar sales will be taken off. They're at the printers now, so we're going to start our calendar drive. We've also got a couple of guys that are going to help again with the bargain shop toy drive that's being donated, or the funds and everything that's channeled to the food bank for Christmas families. We also have the food bank, the Hampers of Hope we donate, and we'll be helping some of the less fortunate in the town. So, and I think that was it, Lana, I believe. Yes, so I present this for information to council. If there are any questions.
Well, thank you very much, Deputy Chief, for coming before us today and presenting your report for your department, and please convey our appreciation through council to all your volunteers and to all the members of Coaldale EMS for all their dedicated service. And I'll open the floor to any questioning by members of council, if there are any. Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you for this great report, our Deputy Chief. I wanted to just ask you about one thing and then a comment. Well, actually, 2 things. Number one, the interpretation of the Code Red, as you're alluding to here, is that your interpretation of the Code Red, or is that Alberta Emergency Management's definition?
That's a good question, Sid. So we allude when both ambulances in town are busy, either on a call or on a transfer, and there are no ambulances available, Coaldale Fire steps up and takes the first initiative while we await an arriving unit from Tabor, Lethbridge, Raymond, depends where the call would be situated. So,
Okay, thank you. I think that the mayors and Reeves are creating some concern in that area where there's a lack of emergency services in terms of ambulance service. My other question is with regarding to the school program. I know that the Sunny South and Global has shared some insight in terms of the of how the program's going with at Kate Andrews High School, and maybe you might want to elaborate a little more on that.
okay, so Chief McEwen is presently teaching the program, the intern, or the, what's the name of the program? there?
Fire Academy?
The Fire Academy at the high school. We have 11 students that started. We still, proud to say, have 11 students still engaged in the training. They are still going every Friday afternoon from about 1 till 4:30ish. So it is still steaming right along, and yeah, there's a lot of, from what we hear. I have not personally been to the classes yet. This year is all the medical upgrading or teaching, and the response has been great. And I think by showing that we still have 11 students there, that they are receiving it well and enjoying it. So, yeah.
Any further comments or? Well, thank you again, Deputy Chief, for taking time to join us today. And
Thanks. Move that be adopted for information to
Yeah.
council. Thanks.
does anybody care to? Councillor Holm moves that report be adopted for information. All in favor? All right, and then we have Cindy Hoffman here to present on Settler Days. Welcome, Cindy.
Thank you, thank you. So in front of you, you have a report. Basically, it's a sort of a financial report or summary of the Centennial Settler Days this past year. In that report also, there's sort of comparison numbers for the past from 2017 and 2018 as well. And so we are just coming to council to get your recommendation or suggestion for how you would like to see Settler Days going forward. You've got in front of you pretty much three different levels of service isn't the word, but three different levels of execution and of the Settler Days event. And we're just looking for your guidance as to what you would like to see going forward based on those numbers.
Well, on behalf of the town, would be remiss in not thanking you and all the participants that came together to make the Candy Day, Settler Days event, and the event it was, and that it was outstanding by the comments captured on your Facebook feed and that you presented in your package. It seemed to be very, very well received, and you did seeing you around on Settlers Days, I know it took a fair toll out of you, and you worked very, very hard. So, but I think you'll see that all your hard work paid off with all those positive comments and that, and council really appreciates all the effort and the fact that it was such a well-received event. And I know you couldn't have done it without the Kinsmen and the other parties that came together to make 3 days of wonderful events. The Cowboy Church, it's just a multitude of events the whole weekend. So looks like the whole community came together and made a great birthday party for our 100th. Any questions, comments by members of council? Councillor Holm.
I'd just like to echo your comments there. That was an absolutely incredible weekend that we had, and I'd like to thank Cindy for this report with the numbers and stuff in it. It gives us a lot of detail that when we get into budget discussions in another month or month and a half, it gives us a lot of insight as to where we'll be able to approve things into the future. So with that, I'd move that we accept this for information.
Then, depending on our budget discussion, we can assign bronze, silver, or gold tier service for future years, I guess. We're thinking more tinish probably with the budget, but. All right, we have a motion by Councillor Holm to receive for information with our thanks. Any discussion? Call the question?
Thank you.
And then we have item 9.1. Councillor Holm wants to speak about the request by Coaldale Minor Hockey about hosting the 2020 provincials.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, it came to my attention on Friday that Coaldale Minor Hockey is hoping to bid for the 2020 Provincial Midget Hockey Championship here in Coaldale. The dates for that, the way I understand it, is that it's going to be March 26th to the 29th, 2020. And this group is looking for a letter of support from Town Council to accompany their bid package that goes up to Hockey Alberta for this application. So with that, I would sponsor a motion that the town of Coaldale supports the application of the Coaldale Minor Hockey Association for their bid to host the 2020 Midget Hockey Provincial Championship, and the council provides a letter of support to the Coaldale Minor Hockey Association to support their championship bid. And I'd like to make that as a motion, but I think I'd like also add a caveat that on that motion that we have administration check with other ice or user groups of the arena to ensure that it doesn't conflict with other possibly pre-planned events in that, but if there's no conflict, that we support their request for a letter of support.
Okay, we have that motion from Councillor Holm. Any discussion? You see none? So that was all one motion, basically. It's sort of a conditional support. Okay, all right. All right, call the question. All in favor? That's carried unanimously. And then we have information items 11.1 and 11.2. I think 11.1 is really not much information. It's kind of telling us that there'll be more information in January. So,
I'll make a motion to receive those for information.
Councillor Simpson moves 11.1 and 11.2 for information. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? And that's carried. And a motion to go into closed meeting. Councillor Lloyd, all in favor? And that's carried.